Hey, hello, everyone. As you're filing in, welcome. This is the Brooklyn Rail's 656th New Social Environment. I'm Carolyn, a programs associate here at the Rail, and I have the real pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Martha Atienza, Yee I-Lann, and Jessamine Batario. We are so thrilled to welcome poet KT Pe Benito here to close today's program. Before we get started, the Brooklyn Rail acknowledges Black Lives Matter, and that here in New York, we are on Lenape-Hoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wappinger, Canarsie, Munsee, Lenni and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and Shinnecock Indian Nation. We recognize land acknowledgements are not a replacement for actual necessary decolonial work, but a reminder of place of the legacies of dispossession and enslavement that sustained and enriched the stolen land we are speaking from. And now to introduce today's guests and hosts. Born to a Dutch mother and a Filipino father, Martha Atienza has moved between the Netherlands and the Philippines throughout her life. Atienza's practice explores installation and video as a way of documenting and questioning issues around environment, community, and development. Atienza is co-founder of the NGO GOODland, which we will be linking to, an organization that collaborates to create case-specific solutions that free land and oceans from harmful substances, whilst enabling more eco-friendly means of living for the local islanders. GOODland worked with the local government for several years to establish May 31st as the annual Bantayan Fisherfolks Day. And this ordinance was finally passed in September of this year. Photo media-based artist Yee I-Lann engages with archipelagic Southeast Asia's turbulent history, addressing issues of colonialism and neocolonialism, power, and the impact of historical memory and social experience. She employs a multi-layered visual vocabulary drawn from historical references, popular culture, archives, and everyday objects. She's recently started collaborating with sea-based and land-based communities and indigenous mediums in Sabah. And our host today, art historian Jessamine Batario, specializes in modern and contemporary art. She received her PhD in art history from the University of Texas at Austin. Batario currently lives in Waterville, Maine, where she is the Lind Family Foundation Curator of Academic Engagement at the Colby College Museum of Art. She's a frequent contributor to the Brooklyn Rail. Thank you all again so much for being here, and I will turn it over to you, Jessamine.
Thanks so much, Carolyn, and thank you all for being here. It's always a pleasure to join a Rail program. Just want to say, first and foremost, I'm talking to you from Maine, as Carolyn said. That's the land of the Wabanaki, the people of the Dawn, and that consists of the Abenaki, the Micmac, the Maliseet, the Penobscot, and the Passamaquoddy. And I'm really happy to be here with Martha and I-Lann. And so hi, Martha. Hi, I-Lann. And we'll be taking all of you through their exhibition that's currently up at Silverlens right now. For those of you who don't know, Silverlens is a major leading contemporary art gallery that was originally based out of, or has its original location in Manila and now recently opened in New York. And so Martha and I-Lann have the inaugural exhibitions here in the United States. So it's really exciting to take you through that space virtually. I'd love to be in conversation with Martha and I-Lann. We're going to talk about what's up in the galleries right now, and hopefully that will lead into just more of an organic conversation and sharing about their artistic practice, which is actually very, very, for me, affective. As somebody who's a first-generation Filipino American here in the United States, I have strong ties to the region and to the Philippines in particular, and I find this work really quite moving, and I'm really excited to be able to share that with everybody through this conversation. So to begin, how about some slides, and also maybe saying hello first to Martha and I-Lann. Hi.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And hi.
Hello from me too in Malaysia, joining.
Yeah, we're here all from different time zones actually. So kind of the wonder of the Rail program. Here, the image we have first is the facade of Silverlens, and you can kind of see a little bit of I-Lann's work. Can we go into the next one? And here is kind of a juxtaposition of both their work. On the left is I-Lann's billboard, and on the right is one of Martha's videos. This might be a good starting point, actually, to talk about your work together. I know you two have known each other for quite a while, isn't that right?
Yeah, who
Yes.
starts, I-Lann?
Yeah, Martha's the artist I go to for advice when working with community. She's visited me in Sabah, and we've had two-person shows before. So this show, but prior to this, there was one in 2019 in Manila, and we've shown in numerous group shows together. And recently we were roomies. So yes, she's a good friend. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, I-Lann. Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to visit I-Lann in, I think it was 2017 or 18. And, you know, I learned so much from I-Lann and her friends. And I really want to mention that I-Lann is part of an NGO in Sabah called Forever Sabah. And they are really a big inspiration for me, really pushing for Goodland to become an official organization. So I think that's an important one to mention, I-Lann.
Thanks, Martha. It's so nice to have a friend who understands being an artist, working with NGO, and all these issues that are sort of behind the actual artwork. Sometimes it's not the actual artwork that is a lot of the work, but it's all this stuff that's behind. So it's nice to have you there as someone who understands. Yeah.
So it was good to open this first show in New York together with I-Lann, of kind of you know, placing for us being on the ground for so long and working with community for so long, and all of a sudden kind of having another different conversation in New York again. And so yeah, I mean, I remember arriving in New York thinking, oh yeah, you know, now I have to talk to people who don't even know where Bantayan is. So yeah.
Yeah. It's if we go to the next slide, I'd love to, I mean, I-Lann, thank you. You know, you're mentioning all the work that happens behind the scenes. What you see in the gallery is kind of like these objects and these kind of manifestations of a much larger practice that involves community for both of you. And so that's something that I've noticed is, you know, when just looking at your work side by side, you know, it's a very different medium, right? But the spirit that goes into the practice for both of you, I think, is what's the common thread here. And that's something that I hope can come out of our conversation. I-Lann, to start, do you want to say a little bit about Billboard here?
Okay, yes. It's called Billboard because it is a billboard advertising our Balai Bikin, which is a making hall that we start building next year on Omadal Island, on the border between the Celebes Sea and the Sulu Sea, sort of east of Borneo Island, where I'm from. And with this work, it's actually the weavers, I think of it as the weavers' work, and I'm acting as an enabler. So the motives that you see here, all heritage motives that come from the community, they're not my designs. What I've done is I've worked with the weavers to compile it into a single billboard that advertises, if you like, their weaving heritage, their cultural heritage, and also as a billboard for our future projects. So this artwork will fund our building fund, which starts with a architectural design camp with architectural students from both the UK and from Malaysia, who will be camped at the island working with the local Bajau architectural knowledge of building on the sea. But a lot of our design work is not actually about architecture per se, but about things like, because the building is built on the water, not on land. So things like floating sewerage systems becomes a a really big part, an important part of the design process in such a sensitive marine ecology. So all of this is this singular object and others, but in this exhibition, this object will be helping to fund that building that we're working on from April of next year. Yeah,
Thank you.
This is a Pandanos Weave, so it's a coastal plant, commercial chemical dyes, because the original dyes are too sensitive, where they come from a lot of marine sources, so it's not actually sustainable to use some of the original colors. So we work with chemical dyes for that reason.
Thank you. I'm really struck by just how large this is too, just the scale of it.
There's some images later in this slide pack from In Situation, which gives the work its original context. And I love seeing how a work can take different personalities within different spaces as well. And the weavers love to see that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. If we go to the next slides, please, this one. Yee-Lann, this is kind of at the opening of the gallery. Can you talk a little bit about this as well?
The previous one was Pandanos, a coastal plant. This one is made from bamboo. We call it bamboo pos, which is from the interior people, the Dusun and Murut people. So my grandmother is Kadazan Dusun from the interior or land people. In Sabah, we have land people and sea people. And they're very different in sort of cultural heritage and even in terms of their medium. This one was the beginning of a sequence called the Tukad-Kad sequence, which is the ridges at the roof of your mouth, which I can explain if you want. But it's specifically about the table, the mat, and interior architectural space. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the title of your show, The Roof of the Mouth. And so I've heard you speak very eloquently about this as the roof of the mouth as being kind of this border zone between public and private, like that moment when you're about to say something or speak. And I'm also glad you've brought up, tying back even to just like these architectural motifs, but the table and the mat. So something that strikes me about your work is, you're doing a lot of this weaving of mats. And I know tables themselves are a really important feature, an important symbol of a lot of your body of work. I'm actually, and I am also moved when you do talk about the table. So I love it if you could share with the rest of the audience the significance of the table.
Okay. Well, historically in Southeast Asia, at least island Southeast Asia, which consists of Philippines, Indonesia, Brunei, Singapore, Timor, we had Malaysia, where I'm from, we have a history of mat making. So all communities made mats, different materials that in a way map our geography as well, because the plants reflect the geography they come from. And all these mat traditions had multiple names, thousands of names of a mat. And we traditionally didn't have tables at all, no tables really in Southeast Asia. The only tables that you really found was something like a palamin or a raised platform for sultans, or a dulang, which is like a tray, an uplifted tray that would contain betel nut. Later, there was the rehal to hold the Quran off the ground. So really tables came in with colonizing forces. In the Philippines, in Tagalog, the word for table is mesa. And in Malaysia and Indonesia and Singapore, the word for table in Malay is meja. This all comes from the Portuguese and Spanish word for table, which is mesa. So to me, the table has come to represent colonial forces. And when asking the question of how do you colonize someone, it occurred to me that it wasn't through the army of guns necessarily, which is of a certain kind of violence, but another form of violence, which was the violence of the table, the violence of administration. And that violence encompasses the shape of our borders. It encompasses the telling of our history, our education system, what is considered of value to keep in a museum, everything, a kind of hard patriarchal colonial state power. And then a lot of my work that you'll see from this exhibition juxtaposes this very patriarchal kind of table power with the mat that I think of, because it comes from community, as being a democratic, egalitarian, feminist, and bringing with it a multi-generational, multilingual, linguistic with it, because it stretches across time and is told through nenek moyang, or our female gendered word for ancestry or ancestors. So it's become a really important realization for me to always recognize the table and recognize the mat as a necessary process to recognize power, and as a way to decolonize, if you like, ways of looking, ways of finding knowledge. I'm throwing an awful lot at you all at once, so I'm conscious of that, and I apologize for that. But basically, to decolonize is to see the table and to see the mat, in my view. Yeah.
Yee-I-Lann, thank you so much. This is, thank you so much for sharing all that. And that's what, you know, when I heard you first talk about that, it was just kind of like a eye-opening moment for me, kind of like a mind-blown moment for me. Also because, you know, when I think of mats and like the tradition of sitting on a mat, you know, you're directly basically on the ground, the mat is spread horizontally. And even just that kind of horizontal configuration opposed to a table that is raising something off the ground, it is immediately like a vertical thing. It's a hierarchical thing. And so even just in the fundamental basics of that, I see how I almost said powerful, and I guess it can be, but like it's like a redemption of power in a way. And I love that. Thank you. Shall we go to the next slides, please? And this is also part of At the Roof of the Mouth. This is the measuring projects, right? And now photo-based work.
Yes. So this series, sorry, Martha, I feel like I'm dominating too much.
No, don't worry.
We have a whole hour, Yee-I-Lann, don't worry about it.
Okay. So measuring project, while I'm working with community, actually I'm known as a photo media based artist. I don't use the camera to make photographs, but I read photographs a lot. And I use elements of photographs from archives, whether it's my own or museum archives or library archives, in terms of the way I use photography. And this series really was it's the way that I sort information in a way, and look. And it's a series about measuring value. So there's so many, what is value, you know, and working with community, one of the biggest thrills and life-changing, everything's changed for me since I started working so closely and actively with community from about 2018 to now. I mean, I've always worked with groups of people in community, but in recent years, so closely. And ideas of value have become really important to me, of what is value? How do we count? What do we remember? What is knowledge? All these kinds of things. So this series tries to unpack some of that. I think there might be one image following. Yeah, so there is 7 chapters. 7 is a Bobohizan ritual number. You need 7 Bobohizan high priestesses for a full ritual, for instance. So it's in 7 chapters. And this one, the chapter 1 looks at that relationship between the table and the mat that we were just talking about. So in the bottom left is the haunted table. In the top right, the haunted table meaning the shadows that come from our colonial past, the undealt with ramifications of the table, if you like. This one, there's the mat is on the table. This is performed by friends of mine from the Tagaps Dance Theater in Kota Kinabalu. So it's an urban dance group that also work with traditional form as well. They do. So it was really important working with them, actually. And then, for example, the top right, this is the Tiang Sri, the central pillar in traditional architecture of the home that holds up the house. And this Tiang Sri, this pillar, in the middle of that home architecture is a female pillar. So I've extended it here into a tree root system that includes the hair of these 4 women lying on a mat below the roof. And it just talks of this sort of central role of ancestral female knowledge connected also with the mat. Because the mat contains so much storytelling, and it's the storytelling that you see in the communing in the other 2 images that to me really highlights how a mat can be a platform or a stage or architectural space to so many other realities that I think our contemporary world has either forgotten or not given due time to consider these other forms of knowledges and philosophies. So with this picturing project series, I'm just going to talk about chapter 1, but it kind of introduces how value, what we think of as value, is not necessarily such a universal thing if the universe is so small. I'm trying to make I'm trying to understand multiple universes and multiple knowledges. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
thank you. And I think that comes through even in the juxtaposition of the 2 bottom images, you know, when you're talking about the haunted table and the shadow of like the colonial history of the table. And what counters that is the storytelling that, you know, one can imagine is happening with 4 women seated at a mat. That's like the very kind of the different, that's what counters like institutional history, right? Is the storytelling, the stories we tell each other. And so I definitely see that. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Shall we move on to the next one? Martha, you want to talk about Bantayan Island and these videos?
It's very difficult to talk after Yee-Lann. Yee-Lann, you speak so well. It's not my strength. But I maybe for this, maybe we can just show the video. So yeah, I'm filming on Mambakayao Dako. It's the smallest island furthest away from us, because Bantayan Island is actually a group of islands in the center of the Philippines. So it's located in the Visayan Sea. And so you see the island on the background. Thank you. I hope everyone can see. So this is Nongtonyo Dacomus Turnib. And you see him standing on his boat. And on the back, you see Mambakayao Dako, and that's the island where Nongtonyo is from. And how do I start? So I've been working on this island together with Goodland for more than 2 years with the start of the pandemic. And we ended up on this island because of a battery project. But maybe I'll just talk in short about why I really wanted to show Nongtonyo and his island. Bantayan Island is becoming a major tourist destination. And during the pandemic, they built a huge airport, and it's going to become a major tourist destination now. And so land prices have gone up and coastal communities are being moved off the coastal areas because, of course, you know, these are tourist spots. This is where resorts will come. And Mambakayao Dako is a beautiful island, and it has 87 households. And so this would be like an easy move. And so before leaving for New York, a few weeks before, we had a talk with the mayor, and they are proposing, and they are actually have funding to get to offer the people of Mambacayao housing projects off the island. And since the super typhoon in 2013, a lot of fisher folks have already been moved of coastal areas, and this is because of the 20-meter easement zone, which is actually there to protect people and which would make coastal communities safe. The problem is that I see a direct link, between the movement of coastal communities and these coastal areas becoming so expensive and valuable. So this is a big problem that Mambacayao faces. And we started an official group that is turned into an NGO, or turning into an NGO now. It's called GOODland. And it was really formalized with the pandemic. And we were lucky enough that, we are not a huge core group, but we have artists, creative people, community organizers, fisher folks. We have electronics communication engineers, luckily. And these are some of these people stayed during the pandemic instead of working abroad, because a lot of Filipinos work overseas. And luckily with the pandemic, they stayed, and they're still there now, and they're working with GOODland, really looking at how locals from Bantayan can find solutions to many issues that Bantayan is facing. Anyways, I'll talk about GOODland more a little bit later, but for Mambacayao, GOODland is used as a body and as an official platform where the Mambacayao community can work under and really partner and create the dialogues with the local government unit. So when I go back, we will be opening dialogues with finding an alternative and hopefully not having to move the community off the island, which is going to be difficult. Tourism is also being seen as a solution for alternative livelihood, because, our seas are so damaged that Bantayan is very reliant on its sea. And so, if you talk to fisher folks, they will tell you that, my father talks about when he was young that, my grandfather told him to never leave the island because it was so rich. You just walk into the sea and you would have so much abundance of fish. And now that has changed. So that's why people resort to very disparate ways of fishing and illegal fishing. And of course, we have a problem. The reason why it's so damaged is mainly because of big commercial fishing. So, it's being used, tourism is kind of being used by the Philippines as a solution to all of this. But, for me, it makes me worried, and it makes me sad that communities like this are being moved off coastal areas. And, I use the camera as a way to also document the changes that are happening. And hopefully when people themselves can see the changes, and it can not only become a memory, hopefully the images can be used as not just for awareness, but as evidence, of what's changing on coastal areas, not just with regards to the rising seas, but also communities being moved away. And I work a lot with my brother Jake, who's in Hawaii, but we really, when you talk about or I've been thinking about, been using the video camera for so long that, this, and I've been documenting these places in Bantayan and people, and it's really about, places being memory. And if we can remember who we are, we can hold on to our culture. Yeah. So this is this is something that I'm working on for a long time, and I'm teaching young people to film. So if they can use the video camera, what responsibility do they have, and how can they use a camera as a powerful tool? So they have also been making their own films. So young people from Mambakayao Dako made a film in January, and they were able, through the film, fight for a marine protected area in their reef area. So they have now, in January, they got a resolution pushed through that they have an 8-hectare marine protected area. So, film or video has been such a powerful tool also for all of us.
Mhm.
I don't know, I'm kind of wandering off now, but maybe we can go to the next image. And I think there I show, I mean, this was longer, but I think maybe we can start here where I think I already talked about this, but at least now you can see a visual of what this is on the island. Airport on Bantayan Island. Bantayan Island will be one of the main tourist destinations in Central Visayas. Land prices have skyrocketed already in a short amount of time as predictions look profitable. Investors have been buying up coastal areas, and so coastal areas where fisher folks live are even more attractive now. I see a clear link between the forceful movement of fisher folks inland and the turning of coastal areas into commercial tourist spots. Fisher folks have already been moved inland since the super typhoon Haiyan in 2013. There's a 20-meter easement zone where no structures can be built, and the shoreline is considered public domain. They've already moved 9,000 families of fisher folks to national housing projects inland. That's up to 5 kilometers inland away from the shore. An average household holds 4 to 5 family members. So this is a movement of about 43,000 people. This does not include non-government housing projects like, Habitat for Humanity, Gawad Kalinga, Caritas Philippines, Islamic Relief, and more. It's a complicated issue as the 20-meter easement zone is implemented to protect against storm surges. It's meant to move people to safe areas, but a lot of fisher folks have moved back because they need to stay with their fishing boats for livelihood. As you can see in the image, the sewage canals have been built right under their houses. There's also the rising seas worldwide that we here on the island are feeling firsthand as well. But the issue of climate change are covered by the daily survival of people. Especially now with the pandemic, people's focus is on food security. There are several seawall projects on the island, but people's main concern is access to the sea to continue fishing for their livelihood. They are ready to move wherever they can on the coast as long as they have access to the sea. Most fisher folks on Bantayan have always been nomadic, following their catch. So there's a drastic change in place and culture. There are many issues to discuss, and it's been a challenge to find ways to tackle the many challenges. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
thanks for sharing that, Martha. I'm really struck by even just the starkness of the color palette of your videos. The black and white. And I've said this before, but how it really subverts the expectations of people who are thinking about islands, or who have like this image in their minds of what an island should be as a very like kind of colorful, tropical, welcoming, warm paradise kind of a place. And so to present this material in a really muted color palette, and for Mantonio, like the black and white too, I think it's a really nice stark contrast, and I think it's very effective in that way.
I mean, I keep thinking about why take away the color. I think there's many reasons for it. Obvious is that I want you to stick with what the main things that I want to talk about, because if we color it up, you get lost in the beauty. of the place. But also I think I remember when I arrived in and seeing the projection bigger, I was also thinking that, I maybe, being in the middle of it all with Goodland organization and going around and really doing the very different work on the islands, I really had to also take away the color for myself after filming, just so that I could remember what we were really trying to do,
Mhm.
And I remember telling Ilan also that, also looking at our history and how Filipinos were once documented, also when we put it in the American context, and how images of, primitive Filipinos were portrayed, and this also leading to a free people, saying that, they're not capable of being a free people, and so I was really proud when Nung Tonyo, because I'd been working with Mambakayaw for quite some time. I remember saying, okay, now I need to make art, because they know I'm an artist. And I remember saying, like, okay, I have an image, and because this is really how mostly, if it's just a single boat with a single person, or of course mostly men who they stand straight up, because they also need to see, because the tides are different, so they need to stand up and see if they hit anything, or if they can pass. So that's really how they move quickly between the islands. And I remember saying, like, I have an image, I want the island on the background, and I want one person on a boat, and who would like to do it? And I remember Nung Tunyo showed up, and he showed up so beautifully, so proud how he presented himself, because I don't really work with actors, but Nung Tonyo naturally has a flair for this, because for every fiesta he always joins in, and he's always in full costume. And so we showed him after the first shot we showed him on the computer, and then he came back in the afternoon, because the light would be changing, and we thought, we do it again. And he came in like he had changed, and he had propped the boat, and he was so proud. And so I'm so happy that, it's an image that he himself and his community are also proud of.
Mhm. Yeah. And I guess one other thing to bring up, your show at Silverlens, it's called The Protectors, right? And even, that strikes me too. Bantayan in Tagalog means like
Bantay.
bantay, to watch over, to guard, to protect. And
Yeah,
so
because we're in the
yeah,
middle.
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, because it's in the middle.
I mean, but because Bantayan is in the center of the Visayan Sea, it's always been a place of a watch place, a strategic point. And so, but I really wanted. I mean, I was really stuck with the title, but I thought that would be a good title, because the whole discussion of ownership of sea and land, and maybe we shouldn't have that mind frame of that we should own places, or the sea, that we should more be having a mind frame of thinking we should be the protectors, we should be taking care of it, and we shouldn't be greedy and thinking, this coastline is beautiful and then own it, or like the island is beautiful and then why own it.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Given I'm just mindful a little bit of the time, and so I want to get talking to both of you actually, and just like the role of the communities within your work. And I know we have some images of you within communities, or you with your collaborators, and perhaps we can talk about that. Let's see.
Yes, this is Mambakayaw Dako,
Mhm.
and we actually they have their own body, organized body, and their president she's sitting there. That's Mayet. She's the president of the organization, and that's me and Ramon in the middle. We are Goodland officers. So actually most of the women are really the officers, and yeah, this was a nice moment. They have a savings club, and so we we get together, and this is the day that it became kind of official that they were going to be part of Goodland. So this is a proud moment.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and this was after this was Fisher Folks Day, and this is actually the team that made it happen, except for John Ortega, he's not there. But yeah, this is the core team of organizers who made this crazy day happen, where we had more than 40 boats of fisher folks and fisher folk leaders, and we had the mayor and the local government unit participate, and we partnered with them, and we had NGOs, and we had yeah, the fishing leaders in a multi-purpose hall, and really creating a voice for them, and it's going to happen every year now, like you mentioned. So Fisher Folks Day Bantayan will happen every May 31st, and the local government unit will be funding it. So we're very excited. It's going to get better next year, and we're going to have hopefully much more of a platform and a voice for small fisher folks.
And Yee-Lann says, you know, even yesterday, that you're responsible, Martha, for giving everybody a day off once a year because of all this, right? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if everyone gets a day off, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see how the May 31st will happen, and we'll be sharing it with you guys soon, I hope, next year.
Great, thank you. And then I think, Yee-Lann, you have some photos here with your collaborators as well, right?
Yes. So this is the inland community of Dusun Morot. So the woman standing is Kak Jolita. She's a master weaver. She's, first of all, I should say they come from the town and district of Keningau, which is a very major interior city. And it's the epicenter of the handicraft industry. So there's two communities I work with. One is this inland community, and the other is the coastal community, the coastal community are largely stateless and very much on the edge. This community is heartland community. Yeah, so I just love that. Can I go back? That's Kak Jolita and her 3 daughters. And then the next image is with Nati and her daughter. So there's always this sense of family working in Keningau. And this family have always produced baskets for the tourism market, and they can weave in their sleep. They produce baskets for airport shops by the thousands, you know. So when I first approached them with these, I don't weave. My grandmother was a weaver, but one of my life's regrets is that I didn't learn from my grandmother. So I don't weave, and I don't have the counting patterns. It's the rhythms that I think you need to grow up with, like Nati's daughter here. So when I first approached them with these ignorant and arrogant ideas of making these mats using sort of contemporary language mixed with cultural language or heritage language, they thought I was a bit mad to even, and they'll say, no, can't be done. And I said, but you're amazing weavers. Let's try, let's play. You know, I believe in play. Play's the most important state of being, right? So let's play. And then they surprised themselves. So as we've been working together since 2018, every project, we surprise ourselves. They surprise themselves. So, wow, you're so good. Yeah, we're so good. I didn't know I could do that. So this particular mat, I do want to talk about a little bit. That's on show at Silverlens. There's, yes, this one is, it's nearly impossible to photograph. It looks terrible in a JPEG. But there's several experimentations that went into this mat that make it so unique. One is that we were experimenting prior to the making of this of how to make shades of gray in weaving. And that's the density of white and black. The black here is a natural dye from a tree sap called kayu uba. So we were experimenting with making shades of gray with just the natural weave in black. And also you can't see, but below, but into that shades of gray and below the fan, it becomes very three-dimensional. And there's a mat in the bottom right. And when you stand in front of this work, it all flies out at you. It's like a 3D mat, which I think is remarkable weaving. And the elements, which are impossible to photograph, of how to make a 2D weave 3D. So we've been experimenting, the weavers and I, on that. And the background weave is actually a weave that we've invented, a completely, well, we think it's a completely new weave for us anyway, our cultures, because it's not tessellated or repeat weave, but it meanders. So it's possible to weave yourself into a corner and not be able to move further. So all this experimentation and innovation uses both sort of historic knowledge and ancestral knowledge, as well as language, I suppose, and form from more Western European art traditions, like shades of gray, for instance. So that's been a really, really fascinating conversation for myself and also for the weavers, because, you know, part of the issue with working with communities, there tends to be this desire to make precious and put into a vitrine these old cultures, right? And to me and to the weavers, it becomes, you become so precious you can't move. So we don't want to do that. We want to innovate and move, and weaving has always been about storytelling, and storytelling also of your time, right? So this is also of us claiming that and adding to previous knowledge and adding to it from our time, and always moving and not becoming a dead object in a vitrine. So part of this innovation and invention and reinvigoration, to me, is what will keep contemporary relevance, especially for young people who get bored with the old motifs, for instance, although they understand its importance, as do we, but we need to always bring ourselves into it, our times into it. Yeah.
The way you're talking about this, Yee-Lann, is also just making me think, you know, when you're bringing up historic knowledge and ancestral knowledge, and a picture you've shown previously is, you know, a weaver and her daughters, or like a weaver and her daughter. And then there are other images like later on in the slide deck too, I think, of your collaborators who are children. And so there's like this really intergenerational connection there that I really appreciate in what you're doing, and the way that you talk about, you know, not becoming so precious that you can't move. And just like the passing along of that knowledge from one generation to the next as being part of this feels very, very strong or effective, or a crucial part of the practice itself.
Very much so. If we go to the next image, just to show the fully, so this was the Tika Major. There's 3 on show in Silverlens at the moment in New York, but it comes from this installation of 60 mats, which are a juxtaposition of the table and the mat. And if we go back to that child image, the prior, these are the daughters of the weavers. So part of the collaboration process, to me, is really important that we talk about what we're doing so everyone understands it in full, what's happening, what the work is about. How I'm talking about it to you is also how I will talk about my ideas with them and get their feedback. So that the same happened for this series of mats, small mats. But then this was the first series really that I started working on with them. And initially it was just as test mats to see how we could work together. So they just started as sort of 1 and then 2 and then 3, and that's how it grew. But initially I was giving them silhouettes of tables. They were like colonial tables, or they were like IKEA table and silhouette. And then I realized that I was being dictatorial about the table. I was acting like a table, right? So then with the weavers' kids, we said, well, let's do a survey of the tables on the island. And and you make the tables, you tell me what are the table shapes. And then the daughters were weaving these table shapes. So the base of these mats were woven by the mothers, and then the daughters wove on top of that with the silhouette of the tables. But there was a survey of tables on the island. So, for example, I know this one on the right from our view is the teacher's table. But they also found, for example, a lectern for politicians who would come to the island, and they'd place their speech on it. And they'd ask me, is this a table? Because the politician stands at the lectern and reads his speech. I said, well, is it a table? And they go, yes, it's a table. So they made a lectern, and then they made the rehal for the Quran, like a table for the Quran. So that whole process to me is a really, it was such a lesson for me to how to act more like a mat, to when we discuss ideas together. It's very hard as an artist to kind of let go sometimes. So this working with these kids, getting them involved in idea making, and then making the artwork in such sort of intrinsic ways was really very, very special for me.
Yeah. And I think that shows too, even when I'm talking about like the passing down of knowledge, like as an intergenerational thing, initially what that sounds like is, there's like the authority of the ancestors, and all of it is like being passed down, which is very vertical, like which is a table way of thinking. But
Yes.
but the way that in practice, what has happened here, and the way you're telling this story with the kids themselves, and you as the artist, letting a little bit of your own authority go, and then learning from the kids, the intergenerational passing down of knowledge is not necessarily a one-way vertical thing. It's a two-way thing.
And also the art of storytelling, when you're sitting around discussing an idea, what we might call a concept or theory, actually it takes many forms. And even this kind of storytelling about tables. Oh, this has got Rosia's kitchen table, but very rarely does anyone sit at the kitchen table, only visitors, and then all this storytelling starts happening in that process of discussion, which to me is part of the oral storytelling traditions, which is the basis for concepts and theory. So it's this, and then which I'm learning from. So there's this whole cyclical knowledge system of growing knowledge, from old knowledge, from current knowledge, that has been very, very enriching for me. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So we are just coming up on the hour. There are a couple more images. Yee-Lann, do you want to get through some of these other ones before we open it up?
Yeah, we're saving up for what we call Balai Bikin, this making hall, and it's built on principles of a circular economy, restorative and regenerative principles that are sustainable. And this hall that we're making, these are the 5 leaders of the hall. Myself, Kak Rosia, who is Malaysian, and the 3 weavers from the water village, the nomadic sea community. They're hiring their husbands as part of the construction team, which they're so excited about. But there's this idea that what we're doing is we're making economy, especially in COVID times and in the age of climate change, when we're providing alternatives to fishing this very sensitive marine ecology. So how I think of myself as an artist in this scenario as being more an enabler. And what I'm making is I'm helping with the community to make economy, which I think is really exciting, based on circular principles rather than extractive principles. And the artwork feeds itself. So this is the gang that made the billboard. That's the water village where they live behind. So it's just a couple of images. You can just zoom through. Yeah, that's the village. So behind us is where we're building our making hall, or actually to the left a bit. Yeah. And see the billboard in this is its original context. This is where it comes from. And then it ends up in Chelsea, which is so surreal, but I love it. And I'm very thankful to the art world for giving us a way to make connections, to share the mat in literal ways, and also to feed into notions of the circular economy, of how the art world can affect change through these objects that do circulate also, right? So so I'm wanting to have that relationship with the art world, and not be fearful of it, to recognize the powerful economics around contemporary art and activate it in a way, or trying to,
Yeah, so we began with the billboard pretty much this afternoon, and so I think maybe let's end our conversation here, not end it, but let's open it up rather,
okay.
to anyone who might have questions for Martha or I-Lann.
Yes, thank you all so much. It's just been incredible. Yeah, please put, if anyone has a question, please do put it in the chat. I have one here from GE. I'm going to ask on his behalf. He's asking, can the panelists both speak a bit about on what seems to be the vital lessons of sustainability and holistic cultural approaches they've gleaned from these ancestral cultural heritages? Thank you.
I-Lann, you want to start?
Okay, is that in the chat thing?
I want to read.
Yeah, sorry, he also wrote it in the chat here.
Speak a bit on the vital lessons of sustainability and yeah, sharing the mat has been a revelation for me. Conversation, discussion on the same plane. It's not a dominant culture over another. It's bringing all cultures together, historical, ancestral, heritage, contemporary, making it real for our times and our concerns, not actually letting the politically correct preciousness that also accompanies a lot of heritage weaves, which is something that I faced a little bit in that we're doing contemporary weaves, right? But when we put it all together, how do we find vitality for ourselves when we share the mat, when we bring our points of view and our perspectives together? And I think somewhere in there is sustainability. It's to bring something that you know down in your gut from your knowledge from way back with contemporary times, and not denying it, working in real time now, I think is key to creating sustainable ways forward, like Martha with your videos and the kids.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna be directly answering, but yeah, just like Goodland, what we're trying to do is get different people together and use our existing knowledge on the island with new knowledge, and really looking at that as a way to answer, not just answer questions, but really have solutions. Solutions is a big word, but yeah, solutions on the ground. So for example, with the battery solution, it's really about collaboration. If it's something that I learned from the communities, really is that we don't actually need so much. What we take, we share. And you know, when I started filming with compressor divers, my neighbors in 2010, I was really kind of like, oh, you had a good catch yesterday, so you should fish every day so that you can earn enough and then you can have your own boat. And you know, like I was very stressful and very kind of pushy about it. While I also learned from them that you don't need you don't need to you know how to say if you have enough for the day or for the week for your family and your community, it's enough. You know, you don't always need to be pushing for what we've learned in our new system, our new society. anyways, I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah, I mean, I'm very much on the uh still kind of trying to figure out what local knowledge is and how we can use it, you know. And I think what I'm more working on is that I'm pushing these young people, young sons and daughters of fisher folks to have courses like, if they could just be marine biologists, or if they could be the scientists, and if they could combine this with this knowledge that they are born with, they would have the answers to the problems that we're facing with our sea and our land. Yeah.
Thank you both so much for those answers. Thank you, G, for the question. I'm going to turn it to Chloe Stagman for a question.
Hi, Martha and Yee-Lann. Thank you so much for this conversation today. One thing that's come up several times with Jessamine has been storytelling, and I wonder if you could speak to the curation of the show at Silverlens, which very much feels like your work telling stories to one another. You know, when you walk in, you sort of enter into this circular space where each of you are really represented, and I wonder how each of you push one another, or how you feel personally that the works are in conversation in the gallery, if at all.
How to answer that, huh? It's yeah. Maybe do we talk about, if we talk, maybe it starts before the show, where we have conversation, and the times that we have called each other, we are really more talking about how you know, what it is that we share from home and from our communities, and if we share, or if at least now I speak for myself, you know, doing a lot of other type of work in community. I think our conversation really starts with our process, and so luckily the works, when put together, it works, and it creates that natural dialogue. Though I think, though on the visual side, we never planned, we never talked. I mean, I know what type of work Yee-Lann is doing, and we worked together in 2019, and Yee-Lann also knows my work, though we never talked specifically about the visual, and that was only very close to the show, right, Yee-Lann?
Mhm.
Yeah, but the
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Well, first and foremost, I think there's trust between us in terms of sharing a space, and to me, that's something I really appreciate. You know, my works need light. Martha's work needs darkness. That's where Rachel at Silverlens is really, in particular, very good at that kind of logistical, pragmatic, how to marry things that have different needs in the actual physical work. Yeah. But for me, what strikes me about the juxtaposition of our work in many ways is that often I come with an idea that I'm exploring, be it the table, be it the mat. And then when I see Martha's work, I have this joy because I see what our communities have been making and thinking about being practiced in real life in the community that Martha is working with. She's sharing a mat, you know, they're addressing the table and the mat, all these kinds of things. The land and the sea, Tanah dan Air, which is something that I've been working on, not so much in this show, but in previous exhibitions. So on this conceptual level, I kind of feel that she makes real and puts into reality some of the ideas that we've been discussing with the mats and in measuring project. So I really appreciate that, actually. Yeah.
I mean, you can see the physical work that people been working together with in the maths, in the work that I-Lann is showing. And then I show this documentation of all of us on the water together. And so, the feeling of, or at least I'm so happy, I hope that it comes across to somebody who walks into the space that doesn't know us, to really see that it's about working together, and it's about many, many people and not just us.
Very important. Good point, Martha, to
Yeah.
say that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That definitely comes across in this space.
Thank you. We have our next question came from Ryan Reyes, who I'm going to ask on their behalf. Ryan says, hello from the Philippines. A question for Martha. The Philippines has indeed been capitalizing on tourism to boost the economy, especially with the significant hits we've taken over the pandemic. But tourism projects appear to be undertaken at odds against the actual forms of livelihood that the contingent communities have. Are you seeing ways in which the local government is actually addressing ways to allow these fisher folk to thrive by the coast without pushing them back to inland housing projects? It's in the chat as well.
Yeah. The problem really, I think, with the vision that the Philippines has about tourism is a tourism world where our culture and practice is not really being taken into the money equation, that that it's not just the beauty of the Philippines, but it's its people that makes it special. I mean, of course, people say, Philippines smile and friendly people, but I mean, I don't think that, for example, let me just speak about Bantayan itself. I don't really think that the local government is understanding how rich our culture is, and that our fishing is our culture, and that is something that perhaps tourists would want to see. I don't, I think that the powers of people, the power structures is just so strong in our system that I don't really, I'm hoping, but the fishing communities are really not priority, sadly, because I'm really struggling with if we can really convince to at least create public land for fishing communities to stay on. Yeah, I mean, that's why we even started looking at, maybe even buying back land under Goodland. The problem is that we can't afford it, but also trying to be positive, because through the partnership with the local government unit, they have supported Fisher Folks Day, and they are going to be funding it, and hopefully they will be open to this conversation. And also, sometimes by partnering or also being an artist first and foremost, working with Goodland and partnering with or having these partnerships with the local government unit creates this conversation that hopefully they will be open to groups like us and fishing communities, and open to other ways of doing tourism. But yeah, I don't know if I've answered it now, but yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Martha. Thank you, Ryan, for your question. So our final question, I will turn it over to our very own Fang Bui. If you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. Thank you so much for the thoughtful conversation. You all, in regard to the table that you just describing earlier, Yee-Lann, being the space where all the social political manipulation or agendas being carried out. When the French came to Vietnam in 1858, they called the Vietnamese, because we did everything on the ground, close to the ground. They call us squatting monkeys, would you believe it? And as you know, it's very good for your circulation. and your bowel movement, your everything about it, your lower back pain, it kills so much if you squat every day. In any rate, my question is very simple. I want to ask, when Black Lives Matter began here in the US, after Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and a few others were murdered in 2013, but it didn't really come until George Floyd's death. That was in May 2020, that became a global reckoning on racism in a global scale. So I wonder how it's affected, how it were in Malaysia, from your own perspective, personal perspective, and also your own too, Martha. I mean, I know that you split your time between the Philippines and the Netherlands. How did you all impacted by it?
That's actually a really huge question, and thank you for it. Definitely, I think it's true to say that the whole world was watching and were affected by it. In Malaysia, I mean, this brings in so many issues about who is indigenous, and questions that are very, very hard to answer quickly. But brown on brown colonialism is a thing in contemporary times, right? So I live in Borneo, Malaysia, and in Peninsular Malaysia, which is south of the Vietnam and Asia mainland, is dominated by Malay community, who also are made, that Malay word is also an umbrella term to many groups of people, the Bugis, the Minangkabau, the Batak, and then also which have become the dominant political power. When Black Lives Matter exploded onto our screens, it really affected, I think, the not dominant groups. So the Orang Asal, Orang Asli of Malaysia, which are the other groups who are not part of the Malay politically dominant group. So this identity politics, these issues about representation became really, really foregrounded, specifically, I think, triggered by Black Lives Matter, by the news of what was happening. So I think that there was a really tangible effect of people seeing power, a power dominated by one group of people onto another group of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Martha?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just big question, very big question. I mean, it's something that we're still in, that is still, I'm still also trying to place myself in, also kind of moving back and forth between a country like the Netherlands and the Philippines. In the Philippines, just like Yee-Lann explained, it's also, I'm not sure if I would say directly the Black Lives Matter movement opened up. I think we have other things happening also in the Philippines that has opened up, especially on indigenous groups. And sorry, it's just a very big question. I'm just kind of struggling here, like how to, how about I just take it from myself, being in between these two places, and how maybe I personally move in that. Also, yeah, I don't know. That's also not, I don't know if I'm going to go there. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
Well, let me re-question it differently. Maybe it helps. For example, civil rights movement, when it began in 1960, it didn't really have a greater impact until it gave birth to the anti-Vietnam War movement. which is mid-60. So by the late 60, it gave birth to woman right liberation movement. You know, so it all one would affect the other. Like the way that I growing up Vietnam, I would see television or newspaper being reported from the student protests against the war in Vietnam in America. And we heard the news. So it's all impacted in one way or another. I think that network of television and news have different kind of mediation altogether because social media and everything else. But from personal perspective, I think the emotional response, it hasn't changed because the violence and all of that remain as one singular act of content driven, wherever the manipulation of the media might defer or refer one way or another. So I'm just thinking in that broad sense, it's a personal emotional response to it, because I know it's a big question, but globally, I don't know. I think that personally, we all feel differently. That's maybe the better way of asking you.
Yeah. I mean, I think, when that was happening in the US and of course we also had still the pandemic, I think we had a lot of other things happening in the Philippines in the sense of the suppression, and of using power over people. So, you know what I mean? I'm a little bit clouded in that of what I experienced in those last 3 years. And like we created a movement of trying to create a voice for communities like the small fisher folks, where it is coming loose, but politically in the Philippines right now is really a lot of suppression happening, or the taking away of the freedom of speech, while in Holland this practice is the opposite, where freedom of speech is full gear. And even saying, as a brown female artist right now, I would be in a good place in Holland, for example, now compared to a few years ago. Yeah, so things are definitely changing. Now that I just have come back to Holland, I've seen that in the art scene, that change, like brown or colored people coming into the big museums, into collections in Holland. In the Philippines, we have a whole nother, there's a whole nother effect that is happening. And I think we're still, with our new president, we're still kind of unsure of where our voices will go, let's say. Yeah.
But overall, we artists have a bigger voice to play than ever before. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
Yee-Lann?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Always.
In solidarity.
Yes.
I'm sure Jessamine would agree on that because she will be writing about the work super soon. All right, thank you. Back to you.
Now I'm going to be thinking about this the whole night. So good, thank you for that.
But
really
I also want to say, sorry, Martha, I mean, this is why I personally wanted to do this chat, because it is exactly that, of artists and people in the arts, or people interested in the arts, coming together and sharing a mat, because there is so much to share, and so much resonance with each other in our different communities. So although the communities may be physically, geographically far apart, actually when we have these conversations, often for me anyway, I see so much resonance and sameness. But the important thing is to gather and to share as we are now, and that's why I'm so thrilled and grateful to have been given this platform and to be invited by Brooklyn Rail. So thank you.
Well, you are part of all of our community for sure. So from Boysian social sculpture, it's becoming social new environments. That's what we are doing. So yes, indeed. Carolyn.
Thank you all for such important, urgent questions. Final question from Fong is never too final. So at the Rail, we have a tradition of ending our community events with a poetry reading. And today I'm really thrilled to welcome our poet of the day, KT Pe Benito, to the stage. Arts worker, caregiver, and organizer, KT Pe Benito navigates access and dismantling dominator culture. The arc of their practice is in service to Philippine history, Phil-Am community, human rights activists, and arts and cultural workers. KT creates artwork themselves to sustain victim survivor futurity, leaning into humor and impulse with their art to ground their existence and embrace ease. They are a collective member of Vox Populi Gallery and organize with Anak Bayan Philadelphia and lead as the city chapter's 2022 to 2023 chairperson. With all that, thank you so much again, KT, for being here. I'll pass it over to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all of these questions, for the invitation to share my poem. To Martha and Yee-Lann, this was so brilliant. I couldn't think of like a better artist conversation to kind of like preface this poem that I wanted to share. And so I'm sharing this poem titled Makibaka Huwag Matakot, and I've included the Cebuano title, which is Makibeki Huwag Mashakot, and then the English translation is Dare to Struggle, Do Not Be Afraid. And so this is named after a protest chant in Philippine human rights organizing and democratic organizing in the Philippines that I first heard on a Zoom call back in fall 2020. And it's timely that I share this poem because I was in New York City last Tuesday protesting on the occasion of Philippine dictator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. speaking at the United Nations, on which also was the 50th anniversary of martial law in the Philippines. So I'm coming down from a big week of action that of course we're still going with, and to be sharing my writing and to be receiving this art and like reflection, it really sustains what was sparked in those protests, and that we can, of course, like elevate these conversations to many spaces because organizing has to happen in all of these sectors, right? So this is Makibaka Huwag Matakot. The first time I heard this phrase was in my first national call with Anak Bayan USA. Members of the US city chapters are here along with presenters calling in from the Philippines, so the audio and chat box becomes a mash of Tagalog, Cebuano, and English. This national call is an emergency rally on the Defend Lumad Struggles campaign to protect the cultural education of the Lumad, the collective identity of Indigenous people in Mindanao, Philippines. They live and learn upon resource-rich lands, making them and their schools a target by the government seeking to steal those resources by force. We watch a triggering video filled with screeches and crying as another one of their schools are raided by the Philippine National Police. I look away, my eyes burning, still listening. The facilitators deliver in-depth statistics and global histories of the threat to Indigenous life and this current situation in Mindanao. And then they pause. As this is an online rally, they hold an intermission to chant together. Looking back at myself at that moment, it was strange to sit alone in my bedroom, fist raised, following along with a call and response phrase I wasn't sure how to pronounce at first. Makibaka Huwag Matakot. The organizers on the Zoom call encourage everyone to get on mic to chant with them. Hearing the distortion of all our voices together became its own international battle cry, a glitch in the system working to hold our rage and guttural refrains. After that call, I wanted to hear Makibaka Huwag Matakot again. Something clicked within me in this phrase. In the chants I've heard before, through protest and song passed along, I learn of our shared resistance against state violence and neglect through the decades in the ways that we fight with love for the people. Enough is enough. No good cops in a racist system. No good cops in a racist system. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. And if we don't get it, shut it down. We die, they do nothing. We die, they do nothing. Stand up, fight back. As worldwide issues rise up again, as the conditions of societies worsen, as our climate suffers, people take to the streets and rewrite chant sheets. And this time, for the first time, I'm honoring a phrase crafted by my people in a language and struggle I am working to inherit. Makibaka Huwag Matakot showed me that my spirit had been worrying itself with minor things and failing to continue the mural that my ancestors started painting. The oppressors will have you constantly reacting instead of imagining. If we dream ourselves out of existence, we're not going to survive. If we cannot imagine and defend a future for ourselves, we will surely die out at the hands of a white heteropatriarchal historian. We need our elders. We need our past to plan ahead. Remember to act as you are called to. Use this privilege as a weapon in this time to disrupt imperialism, colonialism, and fascism when you encounter it. And you'll never be wrong when you speak truth to power. Maraming salamat. Long live international solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, KT, so much. It's just really been such an honor to hear you, Yee I-Lann, Martha. Thank you, Jessamine. Of course, thank you everyone from Silverlens Gallery for helping make today possible as well. We would also like to thank the Terra Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program. You can view today's event in our full archive on the Rail's YouTube channel shortly. For the past 22 years, the Brooklyn Rail has provided a platform for the arts, culture, and politics through our monthly publication and public events like our daily NSE. Please check the chat for a link to donate to support the writers, editors, and operations at the Rail. Join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for Genuine Horny Goat, a Rail reading curated by Catherine Chen. And please go see this show if you're in New York and stay in touch. Thank you all again so much for this conversation. You can turn your microphones on now, or you should be able to, and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you all again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Great poems. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Martha.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lan.
John.
Thank you, KT, for the beautiful reading.
Yeah, thank you.
KT.
You're
That
so
was
welcome.
great.
Yes, thank you, Fong. You opened it up. I was like, this is the last question to enter into the poem. Thank you.
Thank you, you guys. Go see the show, please.
Amazing.
Thank you, everyone.
Straightforward.
Thank you, Jessamine.
Congratulations.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Lan.
Thank you so much.
Much love
Take
and
care,
courage.
everyone.
Bye, you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Yee-Lann, Martha, thank you both so much. This was great.
Thank you, Lan.
Yeah,
Thank you,
guys.
Martha.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Jessamine. Yeah.
Thank you, Jessamine. I call you later.
Yeah, talk
Thank
to you later,
you.
Fong.
Okay, bye.
Everyone.